Hey, fifth grade. Today we're going to be talking about President Thomas Jefferson. He was the third president of the United States. And Thomas Jefferson was a famous man for lots of different reasons, besides the fact that he was president. We know that he was the primary author of the Declaration of Independence. Without that, we would not have the United States as we know it today. He's considered to be a founding father because of that and all the work he did in each of the continental congresses that the colonies had before we became the United States. He was also a diplomat, which means he went to other countries and worked on behalf of the United States. He was an architect. He designed his own home. He's the third president of the United States. He was president from 1801 to 1809. He served two terms. Just like George Washington, he stopped after his second term. He followed George Washington's lead, and after his second term, he did not run for a third. He believed in democracy, republicanism, and individual rights. He thought that everyone should have those rights guaranteed to us by the Constitution within the Bill of Rights. He was sworn into office on March the 4th, 1801. And his inauguration was the first presidential inauguration actually held in Washington, D.C. President Washington was inaugurated in New York, and John Adams was inaugurated in Philadelphia. And those two presidents were not inaugurated in Washington, D.C. because Washington, D.C. hadn't yet been built. And the first two presidents, when they went to their inaugurations, they rode in a carriage and waved at people. But Thomas Jefferson walked down the streets of Washington, D.C., and met some people on the way to the inauguration, did not ride in a carriage or ride a horse. During his first term as president, he had some issues he had to deal with, just like all presidents have big issues to deal with when they're president. Anyway, he had to deal with uh, really bad trade practices going on from England and in other countries in Europe. They didn't want to trade fairly with the United States, so shipping from the United States to those countries for a while was cut off because they didn't want to treat our sailors with respect. They just didn't treat us fairly at all when it came to trading with England. He also had to deal with some pirates. The Barbary pirates were very aggressive with our ships as they sailed toward Europe, and he sent the navy out and dealt with those pirates. He organized the Louisiana Purchase, and that doubles the size of our country. Our next lesson is going to be exclusively about that, so I'm not going to go into much detail about that. But basically, he buys half of what is now the continental United States from France. We'll have a whole lesson about that next week. And through that purchase of the Louisiana Purchase, we have a treaty with France, and that reduces our military forces some. He gets reelected in the year 1804, and he did a couple of other things. One of the things he did after the Louisiana Purchase was he ordered forcible removing of Native American tribes and forced Native American tribes to move further west into the land we just purchased from France, forcing them off their homeland and forcing them to new areas as settlers took over lands west of the Appalachian Mountains. So some Native American tribes were forced to move. And obviously, that's not a good thing when you take the land away from other native, taking the land away from those tribes. Not excusing the fact that we pushed those Native Americans off their land. There's no excuse for that. But the Native Americans, they also did that to each other after they had a war with a neighboring tribe. They would often take their land and force the tribe to move. Not saying that that makes it any better, but I'm saying that there is a precedent that happened throughout history with other Native American tribes as they had wars with each other. The other thing that Thomas Jefferson did was he made sure that it became illegal for the importation of any new slaves from Africa. Now, that doesn't mean that slaves are freed or that slavery becomes illegal. That just means that There will no longer be a triangular trade uh, that includes, the triangular trade routes we talked about, months ago, I guess at this point. But there were no longer trading going on where a ship goes to Africa, kidnaps Africans, forces them onto a trade ship, sells them over to North America, and then sells them into slavery. It was completely illegal to bring anyone new from Africa. But that does not end slavery as we know it, because when slaves have children, those children belong to the slave owner, and so the population of slaves was still rising as African American population grew when they had children, and so slave owners were still buying and selling slaves. They just weren't newly acquired slaves from Africa. When he retired from office, he started the University of Virginia. Now, he did a lot of other things. This is just a short mini lesson on Thomas Jefferson. Let's take a look at the questions. First question is, explain why Thomas Jefferson was the first president inaugurated in Washington, D.C. That's a couple sentence answers. A couple sentences will answer that. Number two, what qualifications did Thomas Jefferson have to become president? In your notes, if you reread the beginning sections of the notes, you'll find out all the things that he did that made him qualified to be president. Plus, I just spoke about them. Number three, pick an event from Thomas Jefferson's second term as president and describe it using three sentences. And that'll be toward the end of the notes. If you have any questions, you guys can call, you can text, you can send me a message on Class Tag, you can send me an email. Can't wait to see you guys again next time we have a Zoom meeting. You guys take care, be safe, do your best, take your time and do your best, and you will do a good job. I'll talk to you next week, and we will do the Louisiana Purchase.